Right now, there are many people furious with the postings of Cassandra McDonald on Twitter. Cassandra, of course, is the editor-in-chief of Timcast News, as well as the individual who handles the booking for Timcast IRL. Mostly. We have more than one booker, but Cassandra handles most of it. And, as it goes with any kind of political talk show, you're going to get anger from a lot of people. The first thing I will say is not to be unkind or unfair. There are many people who do not like Cassandra's opinions as it pertains to the war between Israel and Palestine. And Cassandra has taken a very, very hard anti-war stance. She is very, very critical of Israel, and that was always allowed. I think I very much disagree with Cassandra on a lot of these things. And I've taken a pretty hard stance against Hamas and have been overwhelmingly pro-Israel. We have several people at this company who are, I think to be fair, most of the people here lean pro-Israel. And it's just a weird thing for like us to be arguing about because we are not experts on any of this. But people have to get angry. I think it's fair to say that when we have a lot of these tweets of people who are angry over Cassandra's tweets, they're allowed to be angry about it. However, I am impressed by this controversy, so much so I have to do a segment about it because these people complaining, demanding that I fire people like Ian or Cassandra or anybody else and others, it's like they don't watch my show. It's like they don't listen to me and what I've talked about. It's weird, isn't it? Now, I have my moral lines, okay? And I think with like the degree to which Cassandra has tweeted things, and we'll keep it completely real. There was a video, unconfirmed reports of a paraglider attempting to infiltrate Israel during rocket fire from Gaza. Cassandra said it's impressive. Imagine paragliding into Israel, freaking Israel with rockets are launching, the ballsiest of ballsy moves. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that tweet, but there's a lot of tweets that people post I'm not a fan of. And my attitude is more so like this company has values that are rooted in the founding of the United States, in the ideas of America should take care of itself. I'm not an isolationist. I think Cassandra is a bit more. But so the issue for me is, while I do find, and I'll be completely honest, Cassandra's tweet to be distasteful, I understand there's a general argument of it doesn't matter if you're good or bad. There are impressive actions, brave actions taken by evil people, risky moves or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't mean you condone the actions they take. But I'm not a fan of the tweet. But I'm also not someone who lives or dies by the current arguments between Israel and Palestine. I have my opinions. I have my efforts, and my efforts are not directly tied to this conflict, other than to say, I fear it's leading us to World War III. I feel like a lot of these people, I'll show you some of these tweets. Let's go through these tweets. We'll talk about it. Bethany Mandel, who has been a guest on IRL, I believe 2 or 3 times, maybe 2, maybe 3, says, y'all see what's happening with this lady, right? What do you mean see what's happening? Cassandra's held these opinions like forever. It's not the first time she's tweeted them. She's got tons of tweets going back a long time, which is critical of Israel's actions as it pertains to Gaza. She says, how many Jews have been booked on Timcast since she took over as booker? Here's more. The reason why I love this so much is for so many reasons, and I hope I can give you an understanding of my views. First, I'm not going to fire someone over their opinions for the most part. And I've said this before. I am not I'm not so morally absolute as to say there's no ramifications to someone holding negative opinions or working against our goals. My goals with this company are about the United States, freedom of speech, personal responsibility. And what I should really say, it's about conversations and these ideas, better understanding the truth to bring about a better future. It's kind of how I view things and kind of how I feel about stuff. What I deeply, deeply care about, what offends me, people who lie, cheat, and steal. Other than that, come here and express your opinions and I'll argue with you. So Bethany Mandel asks, how many Jews have been booked on IRL since she took over? And I think I might have the tweet pulled up already. Do I have it pulled up? Here we go. Lauren Chen says, she said at least 4 Jewish people on within the past month alone, which incidentally is more than the number of Muslims she's booked. but no one is accusing her of being Islamophobic. Cassandra is not a bigot. Her criticism of Israel does not make her anti-Semitic. That's right. 20% of Timcast IRL guests are Jewish. I think this is really, really funny. I also think it's funny that Bethany responds that Max Blumenthal, as if to imply it's a bad thing. She said, LOL, Max Blumenthal immediately following the massacre is your defense. You've lost it too. So I will say this. Let me try and slow down here. You're allowed to have opinions I disagree with, and a lot of people here have opinions I disagree with. I respect that. I will argue with you. Max Blumenthal came on Timcast IRL. He is pro-Palestine. We argued with him. But I thought it was important that he explained these things to us from his perspective as a journalist covering the region with a pro-Palestinian bias, which he admitted to, because it helps those who are pro-Israel understand. And it helps my arguments when I actually am defensive of Israel. Why? Max explained to us Hamas intentionally targets civilians, and the music festival where they killed people was a target of opportunity. Okay. You don't want me to have that guy on the show? Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. We had a response from Gabe Hoffman. He says, Tim, you just had Lauren Witzke on your show. And he says she's a virulent Jew hater, recently claimed the U.S. government is occupied by Zionists and that Jews in media are foreign agents. Not a fan of those statements. Think they're silly. She's critical of Jeremy Boring. I'm actually with Jeremy Boring on these points. A lot of people are demanding that I silence these voices or not platform them. Have you watched a single episode of my show? I will say this as I tweeted. I will sacrifice everything I own and live buck naked in the middle of the woods before I drop to my knees to kiss your pinky ring. So when people say, Tim shouldn't have this person on the show or that person, yeah, sorry. I don't live in your world, okay? There are some people I don't want to have on the show. Why? If I think their goal is to lie, cheat, or steal, manipulate, to enrich, to grift, as it were, not welcome. And that's like the only barrier. And when we had Lauren Witzke on the show, did we talk about any of that? That didn't even come up. Must I screen the politics of an individual before having them talk about current events? Not going to happen. Now, don't get me wrong. We know who most of these people are. But it's fascinating to me to see this argument that we mustn't platform people because they hold opinions that is at odds with these individuals. So what happens? Many on the left for a long time refuse to come on the show. They don't want to debate these ideas, well, because they know they'll lose. And now the weirdest thing ever, not really, I've predicted this, many on the right who are pro-Israel are outraged that we would have people on the show who are critical of Israel. Sorry. Have a nice day. We've had many people on the show in the past very critical of Israel, anti-war libertarians, anti-war leftists. We don't get a whole lot of leftists, but sometimes they come on. They have opinions. They can express them. And everybody gets mad because they're like, Tim didn't push back enough or Tim expressed certain ideas. Let's look at some of these tweets. Here's a commercial I don't care about. Ashley St. Clair says, me and many others many times. To insinuate that Cassandra, a dear friend, is anti-Semitic because you disagree with her isolationism is honestly appalling, and you should know better. Garbage like this makes people think we're the boy who cried wolf when there's real anti-Semitism. Posobiec says, wasn't Ashley St. Clair just on? Laura Loomer, not so long ago. What I find fascinating and funny about these attacks, 21% of Timcast IRL guests are Jewish. And you know what happens? We get attacked by actual anti-Semitic individuals and who are angry, not about Israel, but about Jewish people. And they post stars of David in our chat. And you know what? They're allowed to do that. I'm not going to ban them for their opinions. If they call for violence, if there's a line they can cross where if it's like not expressing an idea, it's hard to say because I don't believe in this hate speech stuff. But if the intention is not to advance conversation, but to try and grift, as I described it, that's the line. If they're like trolling or grifting, and a lot of trolling, I mostly am okay with. But if it's really just like, you know, if someone has an opinion that's negative towards a group of people, I think they should be called out and exposed for that. I don't think they should be banned for that. But we get it's funny in the years of this show and in the past like year or so with Cassandra doing booking, People have complained to us religiously, relentlessly, that Cassandra is a pro-Jewish Zionist. I am not exaggerating. This is hilarious. There are people right now accusing Cassandra of being anti-Semitic when the whole time before this, she was being accused of being pro-Jewish Zionist because she books a disproportionate amount of Jewish people to come on this show. Wow. It's an amazing world we live in, isn't it? It's an amazing world we live in. And there are people saying like, we won't watch Timcast. Well, look, we have guests that are coming on the show this week who are like vehemently, virulently, like just pro-Israel. I shouldn't say virulently. It's probably just, I mean like passionately. And we're probably going to, on the show, completely agree with them. And Cassandra books these people, despite her own political opinions. I don't feel that her opinions interfere with her ability to do the job well. In fact, as editor-in-chief, she's very careful, and I think she does a fantastic job. She'll say something in our company chats. She'll be like, "Hey, I don't think I can write up the story. I'm too biased on this one. I'm so angry right now." And then she'll tweet her opinions, and I'm like, okay. She's against the killing of civilians. I respect that. She doesn't like war. I respect that. She's anti-intervention, very, very anti-intervention. I can respect all those things. I think some of her tweets may be, I'm not a fan of them, distasteful, whatever. But there are people who are like shocked to find that I would stand up for my friend. And this is the thing people need to understand. And I'll pull up some more tweets on this one. Let me read this first. Gabe Hoffman said we had Lauren Witzke on the show. And I said, I've also had Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, Enrique Tarrio, Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, Ye, Vosh, etc. My opinions are my opinions. It's like you've never heard my opinion on free speech and platforming. The left doesn't want to come on the show. Sometimes they do. We've got some good guests slated, and we want to hear from them. And we want to argue with them. That's the point. The idea that I'm going to people get all mad at Ian. And it's like, dude, do you want to live in an echo chamber where you never hear a contradictory opinion or a counterpoint to your points? Right? People are mad that Ian said he wants Palestine to be Gaza to be the 51st state. And everyone at the show laughed at him. And Ian was like, well, and he defended it. And it's a nonsensical position. And I think it was wrong. And I argued with him for it. But you know what? That's the point. We bring people on the show because we're trying to have a robust conversation, not a biased one. And I know. If we went full steam ahead, hardcore conservative, pro-Israel, or hardcore left, we'd get a bigger audience. We do. But I am me, and I do what I feel like doing, and that's it. And anything you bequeath upon me in terms of your viewership or your membership at timcast.com is a gift that I am grateful for. Some people hate watch the show. We have members who have called in to yell at me. They're allowed to do it. You're allowed to do it, and I respect it. I'll argue with you, and I'll use strong words, but I really respect people who want to call into the show and are like, Tim, you're wrong, and criticize me, and then I'll push back and tell you why I think I'm right. That's the world I live in. The world I live in is that I do things I feel like doing. I talk about things I feel like talking about. If you want a grifter, go find someone who's going to grift to you. You want to see a show where we are going to have on people who like Palestine and people who don't like Palestine. We are going to have on people who are pro-Russia. We did. And they get all mad. Everybody gets mad at us. Dude, I don't care. Joe Rogan mentioned that he just wants to talk to people about stuff, and they get all mad at him for it. I'm a bit crazier than that. I want to talk to people about politics. It's the saying, who was it? Was it Aristotle? I don't know. Better to be a fisherman. No, probably not. Better to be a fisherman than to meddle in the politics of men. Oh, I'll meddle. I will meddle. Bring them all down. I'll bring on a communist and a fascist and a libertarian, and we can all yell at each other. Why? Because I want to understand, and I want to hear what these people's arguments are. And we have people on the show who have bad opinions, and they're wrong, and I yell at them. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, blah, blah, blah. And we go back and forth. I'm like, what? And I push back on people. People get mad sometimes. They're like, Tim, you're being too mean to your guest. Dude, I do what I feel like doing. If you want to watch an echo chamber, go find your echo chamber to watch. If you want to watch a variety of opinions and conversations around global ideas where we can try to broaden our horizons and figure out what's true and correct, that means we're going to listen to everybody, including people who are wrong. And that means, honestly, we need someone like Ian. Ian could be wrong about a lot of things. But as the meme goes, he either rolls a 1 or a 20. You familiar with this? Basically, in Dungeons and Dragons, I know it's a funny meme, right? If you roll a 1, it's a critical failure. So bad. So bad. It's laughable. And a 20 is a critical success. And the joke is that Ian only has 2 positions. He's either laughably wrong or beautifully correct, showing utmost wisdom and insight that people are shocked by. Typically, he'll say something and people roll their eyes. And then every so often they say something and people are like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. I think that's a wild card that adds to the show. And when he's wrong, we all just tell him he's wrong. Don't you want to hear someone express an opinion and then have it be explained why it's wrong? I'll end with this. And I'll tell you a story, my friends. You know, we have a lot of people come on Timcast IRL. Cassandra is our principal booker and editor-in-chief of Timcast News. I think she does a great job. I think she's brilliant. I disagree with her on a lot of things. It's okay. That was always allowed. If someone at Timcast was actively working against our values, like they were an abject communist who was trying to put these awful books in schools and destroy the United States, they wouldn't work here. If someone believes in meritocracy, individuality, but they have a political opinion on regional conflict and they oppose war and stuff, it's like, well, you know, we'll discuss it. But so long as it doesn't interfere with your ability to do your job, I don't see what the issue is. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to refuse to come on the show because they don't like Cassandra. And what am I going to do? Cry about it? We already have a ton of leftists who won't do that. I don't care. The funny thing is, but there's a lot of leftists who are now pro-Palestine who are like, well, now that she's critical of Israel, perhaps I'll come on the show. You know, dude, whatever, man. People are going to do people stuff. That's what I always say. We're going to have honest conversations, and my opinions are my opinions, and her opinions are her opinions, and we're allowed to disagree with each other and still be friends. In fact, she's one of my best friends, and I saw how people were so mad about it. They're like, Tim Pool said she's his best friend. Well, I think my girlfriend is my best friend, but Cassandra is one of my best friends. So I'll tell you this story, as I've told before, which is it's a hard story for me to tell. It almost makes me cry, and it's the story of Hachiko the dog. Do you guys know the story of Hachiko the dog? You do, because I've told it before, and many of you are just familiar with the great legend of Hachiko the dog. Hachiko was an Akita who was raised by a Japanese professor. One day broke from the house and followed him to the train station and watched him board the train. He took the train to university where he would teach a class. And this began the tradition for, I think it was a couple years, 2 years, where Hachiko the dog would walk with the professor to the train station and see him board and leave. Hachiko would go home. But Hachiko would come back around 5 and wait at the train for him to return. You see, Hachiko eventually figured out around the time the professor would come back from the train. And Hachiko, the faithful and loyal hound, would wait for him. One day, the professor boarded that train and waved goodbye to Hachiko and gave him a pat on the head. And while he was at the university teaching, he suffered a stroke and he died. Hachiko waited that day, and the professor never returned. Every day after that, Hachiko waited. Now, there were some interventions. People would try to remove him, rehome him, but he would always return to that train station, waiting for the return of his friend. Hachiko didn't know what happened. They say that when a person dies, it is imperative that you let that dog smell the death to know that their friend passed. The dog will mourn, and the dog will eventually find peace and move on. The same as us. Think about it. You have a friend, a lover, a child, a brother. One day they disappear. Do you give up? Do you ever stop looking? Many people do not. I think most people don't. And there are people who say to them, look, it's been insert amount of time. I think it's time we give up the search, something we can do. And they may. But the person says, I will hold in my heart the hope that they are alive, and I will not give up. And for Hachiko, just a dog. For 10 years, he waited at that train station. And we knew, but we couldn't tell him. The dog needed to smell the death. That's what they say. The dog needs to smell the proximity of the individual who passed, and they'll know, and they'll mourn. They built a statue for Hachiko at that train station in Japan. And I read this, that March 8th is Hachiko Day, the Japanese holiday for loyalty. I read a story about how they once found a shattered vinyl which contained an ambient recording of Hachiko's bark. And they played it on the radio, and it was inspirational to the people of Japan. I hope all of that is true, man. Why? You know, there's something I love and respect, and something that wells me up more than anything, and it's loyalty. I am deeply inspired by it. Loyalty. And so the idea that I would betray a friend over a business or politics is so laughably insulting to me and everything I have ever spoken about and stood for. Aside from the fact I routinely say I'll platform whoever I want, and I will argue, and people are allowed to have bad opinions, and the people of bad opinions we've had on the show, the idea that I would ever turn to one of my friends and say, sorry, strangers on the internet are mad at me, so I'm going to fire you or something like that. It's just so laughably insane. The idea that anyone could get me to drop to my knees and kiss their pinky ring over something like this is insulting. Please, if you have an issue with Cassandra's tweets, you are welcome to come on the show and say it all. And we'll talk about it. And I'll probably agree with you that I find some of her tweets to be distasteful and wrong. But she's allowed to have them. There are certain ideas that I don't tolerate, no question. I'm not so simple as to say that I'm going to stand on absolute principle over morals. If someone at this company advocated for things that struck to my core, then there would be a talking to. And so it's simple enough to say this. We are not a company that is predicated upon the circumstances of Israel-Palestine. I am not a scholar on the region, nor are my opinions formed by what is happening there, other than to say I don't want it to blow up into World War III. If we were talking about someone who is a good friend of mine, like Cassandra, if Cassandra came out and started tweeting about, supporting these books in schools, which she doesn't, by the way, I would have a talking to. And I'd be like, this goes against our values and you're actively fighting against what we believe in. And I can say this. If Cassandra came out and started cheering on Hamas to an extreme degree and supported the killing of civilians, there'd be a talking to that would likely result in something. But I don't know what. And I've said that before because I have moral lines too. But right now, this argument that what Cassandra has said has crossed this extreme line. I'm like, dude, I have a lot of lefty friends. And leftists claim I'm lying when I say it. And people on the right are arguing it like they'll criticize me for it. And I get people calling me a liberal or whatever. Look, I have my moral lines. And this for me is to the point of I really disagree with a lot of these tweets from Cassandra. I've been very critical of Hamas and I've been very pro-Israel. I don't see Cassandra going on Twitter and insulting me or attacking me. We're friends. You know what I mean? It's funny, the whims of people, but I don't want to rant too much on the subject. Let me just say, yeah, I got my line. There are some people that come on the show mostly because they're grifters, but I'll bring on most people and we'll have these arguments because sunlight is the best disinfectant. And if you can't actually defend your position, then maybe it's not a position worth having. But look, the cancel culture stuff ain't going to work. I don't know. There's no absolute answer. I can't tell you definitively that every single person who works here, would always be defended by me. And there absolutely are things Cassandra could say which would criticize our friendship. Friendship isn't just about I don't believe in this idea that we could be friends if you're abject evil. You know what I mean? If there was someone I've been friends with my whole life and then they decided to come out and advocate for just Hamas directly and cheer on and come to me and rant about really killing civilian stuff, I'd be like, bro, we can't do this. We can't. You know what I mean? We have lines and limits. And that's about it. I don't know what else to tell you other than welcome to Timcast, I guess. I am who I am. It is what it is. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. I appreciate your support up until now. But just understand the left supported me greatly during Occupy, and then they got mad later on when Trump got elected, and I was honest about Donald Trump. And it may be that many people who are very pro-Israel get mad at the people I surround myself by or whatever, and that's just the way it's going to be. And then one day the left is going to be like, Timcast's not so bad. And here we go. And we'll do our best. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.